My name's Heather McLean. I'm a retired teacher, and I can't really recall ever consciously thinking that I was a girl, boy, or anything. I just remember having a very happy childhood and being brought up to say what I thought. My parents were very, my dad especially, he was quite plain speaking, and my sister and I were brought up to say our piece, and if we were wrong, then we had to accept responsibility that we were wrong, and if we were right, then to stand our ground. I remember, around about the age of 11, 12, becoming politically aware because my dad was very politically aware. He was the union rep in his work, and from a very early age, I remember my dad sort of, having political discussions and things, ranting at the TV and what was happening and all the rest of it. My dad was quite an old-fashioned sort of man. He expected my mum to, put his tea on the table and, fetch the knives and forks for him and all sorts of things. So, but he didn't bring me up to be subservient to anybody. It was quite a strange thing. They expected my mum to be the wife and mother, but I wasn't brought up in that way. I was probably began to be aware of boys maybe about the age of 14, 15. I remember my sister's 4 years younger than me. My sister and I were still playing with our Barbie dolls at the top of our stairs. We had a landing and we used to design houses for the Barbie dolls. And I remember doing that up to about the age of 14. Kids nowadays, they're done with all that in primary school, but I remember being in secondary school and still playing with dolls. So I suppose in a way, I wasn't sort of as grown up at 14 as some of the youngsters nowadays. Then, I went to college and trained as a teacher, and I suppose that's when I really became aware of, I'm a young woman. And, I got a job teaching in Dundee, which only lasted for a year because jobs were few and far between then. And then I got a job out of Dundee in a place that I never even had heard of. I then transferred from there, New Deer. I didn't even know where it was. I came off the phone, having been offered the job, and asked my dad, "Where's New Deer?" And he got his AE map out, and we found where it was. My dad was very good at wanting me and my sister to be independent and strong and stick up for ourselves. I remember being 17 and getting my provisional license, and my dad used to take myself and my sister out every night after tea, after we had our tea, driving round the local area, and both of us passed our test first time. And that gave myself and my sister some independence, really. I remember, just like everybody else, young teenagers, 17 years old, we were out underage drinking and all the rest of it. But when I reached the age of about 22, there was a murder in Dundee, and a young girl had got into what she thought was a taxi, and it wasn't a taxi at all, and she ended up being murdered in the local woodland. And it was at that age that I decided I wasn't going to drink, I was going to be the driver. And luckily I'd passed my test, and my dad gave me his old works van to drive about in. So that gave me a measure of independence. I didn't have to rely on taxis, I didn't have to rely on anybody other than myself. When I went to school, when I got a job in Stonehaven, I used to travel every day to Stonehaven. I remember distinctly the head teacher there saying, you shouldn't be travelling, you should be living here. And I remember I must have been only about 24, but I had the presence of mind there to say to him, really doesn't matter what you think as long as I come here and do my job. That's all that matters. So I suppose I grew up being quite a strong person. The one thing that I do remember about being in my 20s was I was unhappy with my body because, some people might think this is a blessing, but I thought it was a curse to have big boobs. And I felt that I was objectified by men because I had these big boobs. I worked in a pub at nights, and I distinctly remember men leering at me over the bar, and that made me uncomfortable, but it also made me angry. And I remember one time a man tried to grab me across the bar, but he got the ice bucket in his lap. I've always been a person that didn't stand for nonsense from anybody, and I've always spoken my mind. And I put that down to how I was brought up. You stand your ground, you say your piece, and you get on with it. I didn't get married until, I didn't meet my ex-husband until I was 28. And I was 38 when I had my daughter. And it was at that point in my life that my ex-husband decided he didn't want to be married anymore. He suddenly had this responsibility of a wee baby, and I don't think he was able to cope with it. So I had my daughter, and I didn't have a maternity leave. I just went straight back to work because we split up when she was 5 weeks old. So I didn't even have a maternity leave. And I just thought, it's me and her, and that's it. The only people I can rely on is myself and my parents, who were very supportive. So I feel in a lot of ways that I've worked hard. I'm respected in my profession. I've always worked. I've always said my piece. I suppose people would say that I'm maybe a strong person. I certainly don't suffer fools gladly, but I feel at times that I've had to put on a face. I've had to put on this brave face, even although inside I wasn't feeling it. And then, of course, when it came to time to retire, I was one of these waspy women who was cheated out of her pension. So I just feel that as a woman, I've had to struggle all the time. But of all the things that have happened to me in my life, I think that's what's made me who I am. So I think I'm a positive person, and you have to, you can either, you can let life happen to you, or you can make life happen. And I would prefer to make life happen. I feel that I'm a positive person, and although there's been adversity in my life and the people that I love, you just have to keep positive and keep going. I got involved in politics, as I said, because my dad talked politics all the time. So, 2010, I joined the SNP. And I'm not one of these people who join something and just, pay my membership and that's it. If I join something, I get involved. So I got involved quite heavily with SNP, out campaigning and all the rest of it. SNP, and the way I thought, the direction it was going wasn't the direction that I was thinking. So I, left, and I'm now a member of the ALBA party. I think possibly when I look back on the things that I've done, I'm probably quite a competitive person, because when I do something, I give it 100%. I remember at the age of 23, when I was living in New Deer, it was, a tiny little village way up in Aberdeenshire, and I thought, what am I going to do? Because this is so boring. there's nothing to do here. So I joined the Aberdeen Choral and I started taking singing lessons. But that wasn't good enough for me. I had to enter competitions and I had to win competitions. I remember when my sister started going to dancing, modern jive, the rock, and I thought, I'd love to do that. I'd really love to do that. And at the time I was married and my ex-husband said, oh, you're not going to that, you know. And when we split up, I started going to dancing. But that wasn't good enough for me. I had to enter competitions and I had to go to the Blackpool, the Blackpool Town Ballroom, and I had to compete. I think I've always been a competitive person. When, like, as I said, I was interested in singing. When I got a job back in Dundee, I joined Tayside Opera, and I wasn't content to be in the chorus. I had to be going for parts, and I got parts. Just small ones, but I got parts. So when I join something, I give it 100%. And I think that's just the kind of person I am. I want to do my best. I want to not necessarily do better than everybody else, but do the best that I can. So I'm kind of competitive with myself. You only get one life, and it's up to yourself to make the best of that life that you can. And you know, not just for your own selfish reasons, but you want to do the best for your family, your friends, and for society. So, yeah, I don't have any regrets in life, because the things that happen to you are what make you who you are, and the things that have happened to me make me the woman I am today. Maybe I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I do say it like it is. I remember one time I had a student who was assigned to me when I was teaching in one of the Dundee schools. And the lecturer had said to the student, and she told me this, she said, oh, you'll get on well with Heather because, she's plain speaking. She calls a spade a bloody shovel. And I suppose that just sums me up. I don't suffer fools gladly. I say what I think, and, I just get on with it. And, I try and get on with people, but if someone is, what would you say, nasty, obnoxious, I wouldn't be scared to tell them, you're not being a nice person, you're not behaving well. I don't know, that's just me. I'm plain speaking.